Okay, I'm Mike Veseth. I'm a professor at the University of Puget Sound. I edit the Wine Economist blog, and I'm the author of a book that's called Wine Wars: The Curse of the Blue Nun, The Miracle of Two-Buck Chuck, and The Revenge of the Terroiristes.
So your interest in wine actually goes back, I think you said, to your honeymoon?
That's right. It goes 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago. We were on vacation in Napa Valley back when you could do it on a honeymooner kind of a budget. And on the end of the last day, we had time for one last tasting. We pulled into this place. I recognized the name. If I knew more about wine, I would know that it was a very famous winery, that it had won one of the medals at the Judgment of Paris, the California French tasting. But I didn't know, so we pulled in and I went in, and there was the winemaker. And if I knew who he was then, I would have known he was really famous. But I didn't, so he poured the wine, and I asked my amateur questions, and I tried to swirl without spilling, because at the end of the day that becomes a problem when you're wine tasting. And I asked my amateur questions, and pretty soon he learned I was an economics professor, so he began to ask questions back at me, because it really mattered to him. 30 years ago, inflation was 12, 15, 18%. 30 years ago, interest rates were 18, 24, 27%. And so it really mattered in terms of what he could make with wine, or what he might have to do with wine. The economy mattered a lot. And so he taught me, a famous winemaker taught me, that what I knew about the economy was important to making a wine.
The book came out, less than a year ago?
That's right, in June 2011.
And how have sales been?
Well, sales have been very good. It's been fun. Finally, I've written a book that college professors don't have to force people to read. People like to read it, and I get invited to better parties, Andy, and life is good. But it seems to have struck a note that people are so interested in wine that they want to know. Some people are, at least, that they really want to know the whole story. I like to say that wine is good, but wine in a story is better, and even the economic story about the global forces that bring wine here, that shape the wine wall and the wine selection that you're offered. These stories seem to resonate with people too, and I think help them enjoy wine even more.
Where does Washington fit in the economics of wine?
Well, of course, it's very important in Washington. And we have a great industry and a great growth industry. It is the case, and I talked about it today at the conference, it is the case today that Washington is really a niche player globally. It has great wines, good values, but communicating the message can be difficult. Getting the distribution can be difficult. Although people are really trying. One of my favorite stories, and I think this might be in the book, is when we were in Riga, Latvia on some other business. We went into this upscale supermarket down by the train station, and there was an entire wall of Columbia Crest wines. And I was trying to figure out why they were there and how they got there, because I had a lot of puzzles. I knew that the Chateau Ste. Michelle group is the distributor of Antinori wines in the United States, so I had developed this theory that the Antinoris were, the Italian wines were big in Latvia, and that they might have brought in the Washington wines with them. But then finally I nailed down the buyers, and the answer was no, that the wines were just good and good value, and more or less that the wines spoke to themselves and sold themselves, which I think is a great testament. It works in Riga. Hopefully it'll work in lots of other places.
You gave a talk a little bit ago, and you talked about how Washington defines itself, and I guess the answer really is that Washington doesn't define itself by a specific variety.
That's right. When you think of the ways that different wine regions define themselves, sometimes there's a signature variety. For example, Napa Valley produces lots and lots of things, but you ask someone outside of the area and they'll think, oh, Napa Valley Cabernet. Or maybe Chardonnay, but probably Cabernet. And if we look at the fastest growing imported wine areas, it's Argentinian Malbec. And there's a lot of different wines, but Malbec defines it, and it opens the door. Or if you look at New Zealand, it's Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc. And again, lots of different wines, but it was Sauvignon Blanc that opened the door. And so you could think that this would be, if Washington could have a signature varietal. The problem is, what would it be? We do so many great wines that if we picked any one, if we picked Syrah, if we picked Merlot, if we picked Riesling, for example, that would open the door a bit, but would it open it wide enough for all of our great wines to get through? And I don't think so. So it's a problem. It's a problem lacking a solution at this point.
Did I hear you say you're working on a new book?
I am working on a new book. It's called Extreme Wines. And it's the concept is that Wine Wars was looking at sort of the center of the global wine market and the wines that people buy every day and trying to understand how that works so the center of the wine glass, more or less. And with extreme wines, what I want to do is tilt the glass on its side and look at the edges. Look at the most expensive, least expensive, best, worst, biggest wine booms and busts. And the idea is by exploring the edge, that I can get a sense of what's changing in wine, and so what's going to happen in the center in the future. We'll see if it works, but it's a lot of fun.
And where does Washington fit into those extreme wines?
Oh, well, actually, it does fit in a couple of ways that I haven't worked out entirely. I will say that Washington appears in the worst wine chapter, but not because the wines are the worst, but because I took a class from Amy Muma at Central Washington University, where she taught me to recognize and analyze wine faults. And so, working with her, I got some suggestions of what really bad wines might look like and why they would be so bad.
You write a blog, The Wine Economist. What's the address for that, and how often do you update it?
It's wineeconomist.com, one word, wineeconomist.com, and it's a weekly. It's it tends to be a little longer format. The posts are about the size of an op-ed piece in a newspaper, so just a little longer. I spend a little more time on them. Happens once a week, but it's a lot of fun, and it generates a lot of communication, which I really appreciate.
Excellent. Well, Mike, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Andy.